Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty fundamental, unlocking human potential.
Yeah, but we're coming at it from maybe a less common angle.
Right. We're not really talking philosophy here or,
Yeah.
the usual self-help metaphors.
No, we're digging into the engine itself, the neurobiology.
Uh-huh. Skipping past the mind, in a way, and looking straight at the mechanism, the reliable, repeatable stuff.
That's the crucial idea, yeah. The sources we're looking at today really emphasize this inside-out approach if you're serious about peak performance.
Okay.
So we're unpacking the brain systems, its functional networks, the things that actually dictate how we learn, how we stay motivated, how we innovate.
Which immediately brings up the question, why?
Yeah.
Why move away from psychology? Psychology gives us such rich ways to talk about things, right? Great metaphors.
It does, and those metaphors can be useful for thinking, but if
Yeah.
you want performance training that actually works consistently for almost anyone,
You need the mechanism.
you need the mechanism, something
Huh.
that's hardwired into the species, not something that changes drastically based on, your specific life experiences or personality.
Right. Psychology often feels very outside in, doesn't it? Focused on personality.
Exactly, and personality is shaped by so many individual factors, nature, nurture. It's incredibly complex.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the advice out there on finding your passion or building grit. That stuff is so tied to who you are as an individual,
So what works for one person?
might be totally useless for someone else. The highly driven extrovert versus maybe a more skeptical introvert. Very different starting points.
Okay, I see the variability problem of psychology. But personality must still play some role, surely.
Yeah.
I mean, if the brain mechanisms are the same for everyone, why is performance so different between people?
Oh, it absolutely matters. Personality influences how you might approach things, your
Mhm.
preferences. But we're talking about the underlying trainability, the core mechanisms.
Okay.
The way neurons fire, the way networks activate that basic architecture evolved across the whole species. Right. So if we focus on training those universal systems in the right way, we can kind of bypass some of the limitations imposed by individual personality differences.
So it offers something more reliable, more repeatable.
That's the huge value proposition, exactly. For anyone interested in genuinely improving performance, mechanism beats personality guesswork.
So to really grasp these universal mechanisms, we have to talk about the technology, don't we?
Yeah.
The revolution that kicked off, late 90s, early 2000s?
Absolutely. That's when neurotechnology really started to take off. We finally got the tools to, look under the hood while the engine was running.
Things like fMRI, SPECT scans.
Yeah, fMRI, for instance. It's fantastic for seeing where activity's happening in the brain, the anatomy, the networks involved.
But it's relatively slow, right?
It is. It typically works on the time scale of seconds, which in brain terms is quite a long time.
Okay.
Then you have other tools like EEG or MEG. These are incredibly fast.
It's lightning fast.
Yeah, they let researchers track brain events down to the millisecond level.
And that speed difference is really important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Analytically.
It's critical because the older view of the brain, the one many of us kind of grew up with, was heavily based on localization.
The idea that specific spots do specific jobs.
Yeah.
Like Broca's area for language production.
Exactly. And a lot of that understanding came from observing people after strokes or brain injuries, or even flawed older ideas like phrenology, bumps on the head telling you about personality.
Right.
But that localization view, while not totally wrong, it just doesn't take us far enough if we want to understand complex things like peak performance.
The newer tech, especially the faster stuff.
It revealed something crucial. The brain primarily works in networks, highly integrated networks. It's rarely just one spot lighting up. It's multiple areas coordinating, firing together.
Okay, networks. Now, when I hear network, I tend to think of physical connections, like wires,
Oh,
hardwired pathways.
and those exist, definitely. Those are your myelinated pathways, insulated for faster, more permanent transmission. Think of them like the brain's highways. But for the kind of adaptability and performance we're talking about, functional networks are often even more important.
Functional networks, what's the difference?
Functional networks are more temporary. It's when groups of neurons, often in different brain regions, essentially team up and organize themselves into what's called a cell assembly to tackle a specific complex task. They coordinate their firing patterns.
And this is where the milliseconds become crucial.
Precisely. The speed is just astonishing. These cell assemblies, these functional networks, can synchronize their activity, achieve functional connectivity in something like 1/100th of a millisecond.
Wow.
Think about that. Why does that matter to you, the listener? because it explains how we can adapt and learn so quickly sometimes.
Right. It's not always a slow, grinding process.
No. If your brain can literally form a functional task force in the blink of an eye, you don't necessarily have to wait weeks or months for a new insight or skill to start clicking. You can potentially accelerate that process dramatically if you know how to trigger this co-activation.
That really highlights why the technology matters. It shifts the focus from just static maps to dynamic function, real-time processing.
Exactly.
And when we talk about functions that are critical for high performance, one network comes up again and again in the sources, the executive attention network.
Ah, yes, the executive attention network. Hugely important. It's fundamentally about self-regulation, control.
What does it do?
Its main job is to let you override your more automatic, instinctive behaviors. It allows you to focus your attention deliberately on things that require effort or aren't immediately rewarding or fun.
Like forcing yourself to study for an exam on a topic you find boring.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Or working through a complex, tedious spreadsheet when you'd rather be doing anything else. This network is what keeps you on task, filtering out distractions, inhibiting impulses.
It's the mechanism behind willpower, almost. Conscious control.
You could frame it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
It's what stops you from, say, eating the entire tub of ice cream that's calling to you from the freezer.
Huh. The classic example.
Right, the immediate impulse is sugar, pleasure, reward, now. But the executive attention network kicks in, activates higher order thinking, probably involving the prefrontal cortex interfacing with those deeper reward centers, and says, hang on, let's think about the future, health goals, waistline.
It allows you to choose the harder path with the better long-term payoff.
Precisely. It lets you align your actions with your goals even when your instincts are pulling you elsewhere.
And that ability, that alignment, that sounds exactly like the definition of peak performance the sources often use. Getting our biology to work for us rather than against us.
It really is. And it's fascinating. This isn't actually a new idea at all.
Oh?
Go back over 120 years. William James, basically the father of American psychology, wrote in the very first psychology textbook that the great aim of education is to make our nervous system our ally and not our enemy.
Wow. So he intuited this over a century ago.
He absolutely did. And now, thanks to neurotechnology, we're finally starting to understand the specific biological systems, the networks that James was talking about. We can see how to actually make the nervous system our ally.
Which brings us neatly to the core framework. The sources seem to converge on 4 foundational systems, right? Kind of a universal roadmap for cognitive peak performance.
That's right. These are the big ones we can deliberately train to get our biology on side. They're often referred to using catch-all terms: motivation, learning, creativity, and flow.
The 4 pillars.
The 4 pillars, exactly. These aren't single brain spots, obviously. They're complex functions involving widespread networks, but they structure the whole process of achieving high performance.
Okay, let's break them down. Motivation first. That's the starting point, right? What gets us into the game?
It is. Neurologically, motivation is deeply tied to how our dopamine systems are regulated. It's about drive.
So it's more than just feeling passionate.
Much more. It's about how our brain processes rewards, both extrinsic, like goals, money, recognition, and intrinsic, like curiosity, the sheer pleasure of mastering something difficult.
Okay.
When we talk about concepts like grit or persistence, biologically, we're often talking about the ability to keep those dopamine circuits firing appropriately, especially when things get tough. Keeping the focus on the eventual reward, not the immediate effort or discomfort.
So motivation is the fuel, the initial direction. Then comes learning. That's what lets us keep playing the game, right? Get better.
Exactly. Learning allows us to acquire skills, adapt, improve, and this is where that rapid functional connectivity we talked about becomes really important again.
How so?
Well, effective learning, especially deep practice, isn't just about mindless repetition. It actually accelerates the biological process of myelination.
Insulating the pathways.
Right. You're essentially wrapping the neural pathways, the cell assemblies you use most often for that skill, in fatty insulation. This makes the signal transmission along that network faster, more efficient, more reliable.
So you're turning a temporary functional connection into something more permanent, more hardwired.
You're making it much closer to a hardwired skill, yes. Strengthening the connections that matter for that specific performance.
Okay, so we have the fuel motivation, we have the vehicle for improvement learning. But what happens when the path isn't clear, when you hit a roadblock or you're aiming for something really novel?
That's where creativity steps in. Creativity is how we steer, how we navigate uncertainty and find new paths.
Crucial for high, hard goals.
Absolutely essential, because the solution often isn't on the map yet. Neurologically, creativity is often linked to something called transient hypofrontality.
Transient hypofrontality. Okay, let's unpack that term. What does that mean for you, the listener?
It basically means temporarily dialing down the activity in parts of your prefrontal cortex.
The brain's editor, the sensor.
Exactly, your inner critic, your logical filter. When you relax that intense analytical focus, the brain's networks seem to gain more freedom. They can make looser, more novel connections between ideas and regions that don't normally talk to each other much.
Ah, so that's why insights often pop up when you're relaxed, like in the shower or out for a walk.
That's a big part of the theory, yes. The judgment center is momentarily offline, or at least less active, allowing for more unusual combinations, more innovative thoughts to bubble up. Maximal network exploration, you could say.
Interesting. So sometimes you need to deliberately let go of control to find the answer. Okay, motivation, learning, creativity.
Yeah.
And the final pillar, the amplifier.
Flow?
Flow, the state everyone chases.
Right. Flow is often described as the state of optimal performance. It's an optimized state of consciousness.
What does that feel like? What's happening?
It's that feeling where effort seems to vanish, your sense of self kind of fades into the background, time distorts, and you feel your best and perform your best, often simultaneously. Biologically, it seems to involve incredible network efficiency. You're leveraging motivation, learning, and creativity all at once, seamlessly. It's how we get those moments where results just blow past our normal expectations.
The ultimate expression of getting your biology to work for you.
You could absolutely say that. It's the peak state of network efficiency for performance.
Wow. This has been really clarifying. We've definitely moved from vague ideas about the mind to, well, specific, measurable neurobiological systems. Motivation, learning, creativity, flow. And that shift from the outside-in variability of personality to the inside-out mechanisms of the brain, it feels like it offers a much more actionable path forward, a universal roadmap.
I think it does. The really powerful takeaway here is that peak performance isn't necessarily reserved for people with a specific personality type or innate talent.
Right.
It's about understanding and then training these universal biological mechanisms that, well, pretty much every human brain possesses. This knowledge isn't some personalized secret. It's species-wide.
So, for you listening, as you start thinking about how to apply this network-based approach, let's circle back to William James. That goal of making your nervous system your ally. The provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Take a look at the goals you're pursuing right now. Which one of those 4 cognitive pillars, motivation, learning, creativity, or flow, feels like it's currently working against you the most? Where's the friction?
Yeah, where's the biggest bottleneck in your biology right now?
And then the follow-up question is, what specific network-based biological mechanism, even a small one we touched on today, could you start trying to activate or train starting today to begin realigning that pillar and making your nervous system more of an ally in that pursuit?